Okay, so we're going to be going live with Jonathan Torres from the BJJ world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How's it going, my friend? How are you?
It's going really well, man. I'm glad to be here today with you.
An absolute honor for me to be hosting you. I'm not going to
Thank you.
lie.
Thank you.
How are you keeping during this sort of coronavirus pandemic that's going on at the moment?
I'm trying to stay busy. I'm trying to make the most of my time. So I've been real active with my students still. So I've been holding online classes for them, virtual classes 3 times a week, 6 classes a week, really. So 3 for the kids, 3 for the adults. And then in between those sessions, I've been doing a lot of lessons too, one-on-ones, where in the past, people have always asked me, like, hey, have you ever thought about sitting down and talking about mindset and, how to prepare for tournaments or just game planning or just how to build a camp? And I've never really had time to do that. And now I have plenty of time on my hands. So I've been doing a lot of those kind of calls where, people would just reach out and we'll have one-on-ones over Skype, Instagram, whatever the case is, whatever is easier for them. So I've been doing a lot of that. So trying to make the most of my time to help me pass through these times that we're going through right now.
So for those people that are going to be tuning in via YouTube and Spotify, just let them know a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in New York. My parents are from Puerto Rico. They moved to the States to go to school when they were going to college. They're going to university when they came to Iowa. They first moved to Iowa, then set up camp in New York. That's where I came about. And at an early age, I was infatuated with martial arts, and I asked my parents to, sign me up for a karate school or bring me to a dojo. I want to learn martial arts. And early on, I fell in love with martial arts, and my karate teacher then, he was also what we used to call back in that time an NHB fighter, an MMA fighter, right? So he was really into learning different arts as wrestling, other arts of striking and grappling, Jiu Jitsu. So he was always someone who wanted to seek out, other knowledge and teach us. So throughout my 4 years I did karate with him, he always taught us a little bit of jiu-jitsu in our classes. And it was about around the age of 14, 15 where I got my black belt in karate, and I just wasn't interested in martial arts anymore or in karate anymore. And, from there I got my father always encouraged me to continue training and stay active. And I decided to try out the jiu-jitsu class that he had. He had one jiu-jitsu class a week there, and he was a blue belt actually at the time. So I said, I'll try out the jiu-jitsu class, and I tried it, loved it. And I remember within the first few weeks of training jiu-jitsu, I told myself, man, I really love this. I can see myself doing this full time as a career. I would love to open an academy one day. I would love to earn my black belt one day, and I would love to become a world champion one day. And, now I'm here. I feel like I've accomplished those 3 goals, and, now I'm, working hard to achieve other goals that I have. But yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's my little story there.
So do you think that you were sort of a natural when you first got on the mats, or has your skill set developed massively over time? Was there like people better than you that were the same level as you? Do you know what I mean? Because obviously I've done jiu-jitsu for not very long, about 6 months, 7 months now.
Nice.
But when there's new people that come in, I felt like I was a little bit above maybe their starting point.
Right.
So
right.
I don't know. I'm not saying I'm naturally talented at it, because I feel like I'm awful. But
Right.
do you know what I mean? Yeah, there's that little bit of like understanding and learning maybe quicker than others.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started training, I definitely had a natural feel for it, and I give credit to my past martial art training for that. When I first started doing karate, my sensei also encouraged me to start wrestling. So I also started wrestling around the same time I started karate. So, leading up to that point, I already had a few years of some sort of grappling experience under my belt. So when I first started training jiu-jitsu full blown, I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable, and I understood the techniques, much easier than most, I feel. But I will say this, I did study a lot, man. I worked really hard. I still do, but especially then, I remember any little chance or any little material of information I can get my hands on, I will get my hands on them and study it. And it would be books, magazines, whatever old DVDs I can find of matches, or, back then there wasn't really any instructionals, but there was DVDs of black belt matches that, someone recorded on an old camcorder. So I used to watch all of that and just study as much as I could. So whenever I would go back to the training for the next class, I would try to use what I learned either in those magazines or books or in a DVD or a video, and try to, implement that into my game in the next training session. So I was always trying to improve early on, physically on the mats, everything I could, but I was reaching out and trying to seek out other knowledge too.
So diving into a little bit of your mindset, what keeps you going and like finding that next goal for yourself? Because obviously I think you've won the championships twice. I might be a little bit wrong there, but I'm sure it's twice. And
yes.
Obviously for just to win it once would be great, and you've gone and won it twice. Right. What's your next step? What's keeping you motivated and keeping you driven?
What's keeping me motivated and driven is my love and passion I have for the art. I love jiu-jitsu, man. I truly love it. That's the reason why I started. That's the reason why I started off on this path and stuck to it, because I truly love it. And, what I'm working towards now is building the best academy I can build. I want to have an academy that when people hear the name all around the world, they know, that's a great academy. That's, a great place to go to and learn from and hang out at and, just learn jiu-jitsu from. I also want to eventually coach somebody in the finals of ADCC or the gi worlds at the black belt level. That'd be a dream of mine. And, I have a room full of young killers who can accomplish that. They can do it. So within the next coming years, I would love to, produce a world champion on that level. And then at the same time, I want a room full of black belts eventually. I want a room full of black belts that are black belts on the mats and off the mats as well. I want to help spread the art and then spread it to my students where they can get to a point where they can maybe open an academy of their own and continue spreading the knowledge, all throughout the community, all throughout the world.
Is that what also drives you to kind of keep on top of your own game in the world as well? Because obviously you want to be at the top so people can look at you and go, this guy knows what he's talking about. Do you know what I mean? Because if I'm trying to preach some BJJ knowledge, it's not going to be as, say, believable as if you were preaching it. Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. I'm like I used to do in the beginning when I first started training jiu-jitsu. I still seek out other knowledge and try to learn as much as possible. And one thing I will say is, removing or not having any tunnel vision is what really helped me do that. I've always had an open mind when it comes to learning. So, I learn from my students. I learn from the blue belts, purple belts at my academy. I learned that jiu-jitsu is constantly evolving as the years go on, as the weeks go on, as the days go on, right? It's constantly evolving. And I learn a lot from my younger guys. I see them, trying new techniques that are more popular now, and I pick their brains on it. I have no problem asking them, like, hey, can you show me that position again? And cross-training, I like to cross-train too. I have other guys who come in from different academies once or twice a week, and we just trade positions. And, that's really helped me continue improving and developing my game further, because you have to. You can't just stay put and expect for you to, keep evolving. It doesn't work that way. You have to seek out other knowledge. You have to learn. You have to put yourself out there, and competing has helped me do that too. When you compete, it's going to force you to develop your game to, the style of the tournament that you're about to compete in, or maybe the opponent that you're going to have. Maybe if it's a super fight, it's going to force you to study your partner, your opponent, and bring in a game plan. So all those things I just mentioned, I think have helped me continue to improve and evolve my jiu-jitsu game.
What do you think some of the key fundamentals are for running a successful academy?
One thing I'm going to say is you have to have a good team around you. It's a hard thing to do by yourself. You have to have people around you that you can trust and that can help you. I remember asking for advice when I first set out to open my academy, and I remember speaking to one of my friends who owned an academy at the time, and he told me, don't be afraid to bring in people to help you. Don't be afraid to bring a team around you, because I opened my academy, I want to be the one who does everything. But shortly after I opened, a few months, I started bringing in different people to help me out. Like my fiance, she helps me run the business side of the academy. Then I have some of my first students who started with me, who are some of my coaches now. They're like my right hand guys, right? They help me run the white belts, kids classes. So I've developed a good team over the last few years, which helped me run a successful academy. You got to have a good team around you. It's hard to do by yourself. You have to have like-minded people and surround yourself with those like-minded people.
Have you ever had to deal with, say, I mean, the kind of like ego people that come in and think they're going to bully everyone and boss everyone around? How do you deal with those types of characters? Do you humble them quickly?
Absolutely. There's been times where I've actually had to ask some students to leave. I had to like tell them, hey man, I don't think this is the place for you. You know, I think you should move on and find someone else somewhere else that works best for you or best suits you. And, you know, I told myself when I first opened my academy, I want my academy to be a place with a great atmosphere. You know, I've been someone who's had the privilege and the honor to travel around the world competing, but also training and teaching at different academies all over the world. So I got to see different things that I liked and I didn't like. So I try to, you know, make a combination of those things and make a perfect, you know, what I think is a perfect environment. You know, an environment where it's friendly, where you can come in and feel safe, somewhere where you can come in and ask questions and learn and help your teammates, and your teammates will help you reach your goals. So that's exactly what I wanted. And whenever I see someone who doesn't fit that, you know, what we're trying to do at my academy, I'll have a talk with them. I'll let them know, hey, you know, I've noticed that maybe it's not, you're not with the flow, you know, what's going on, you know, what's bothering you. Is there something I can help you get over or fix that we can, you know, move on? And if we can't fix it, then I'm going to ask that person that I think it's better that you leave and move on to a different place that best works for you.
What advice would you give to like say like a white belt? Because I've got it, well, I had it at first where I was kind of, you know, you're learning and you don't think you're getting any better.
Right.
And you're getting tapped all the time, and
yeah.
You kind of just think, maybe I should just quit this.
Right.
What kind of advice would you give to someone that's maybe feeling that way and is thinking, I'm just going to walk away from this, you know, even in your academy?
Right. So what I always tell them is keep an open mind and just know that the journey is a long journey. And when you start off anything in life, it's always going to be difficult. And anything worth having in life is always going to be difficult, especially in the beginning when you're first learning it. So I always tell my students, look, keep an open mind. Trust me, stick it out. And I tend to warn them in the beginning, you're going to be caught in a lot of bad spots, you know, and that's why I think teaching the white belts in the beginning, you know, mount escapes, you know, the hip escape, you know, basic escapes from bad positions work really well because mentally it's going to help them. So when they get caught in those bad spots, you know, they have some sort of idea of what to do. So I would tell them, look, keep an open mind, stick it out. Anything worth having is going to be hard. It's never going to be easy, and you're going to regret quitting if you do quit. But if you stick with it, you're gonna love what you've developed over the next years to come.
Yeah, I mean, the advice I got given, because I was like, I thought I was getting better, and then suddenly everyone was just tapping me out again, even more, like literally so quickly as well. Like I was getting rear naked, just everything, and I was thinking, I thought I was progressing,
right?
And now I feel absolutely shit again, basically. So I spoke to the head coach of my place, and I said, look, what's gone on here? Like, I feel like I've taken 10 steps back. And he goes, no, it's because everyone knows you've gotten better. So
exactly.
They're just raising their game a little bit to kind of keep you off. Like,
exactly.
I was kind of like, thank you. I needed to hear that because I don't know what was going on, but I was just getting, you know, pissed off pretty much. I was just thinking, I'm getting tapped out every 15 seconds here. Like, what is going on? Last week I was lasting 2 minutes, and now I'm getting done.
That's funny.
Oh God. So yeah, that was the advice that got given to me, and it helped. So and that kept me going and motivated. And you know, I've had advice on when I should roughly look at starting to compete, but
yeah.
I'd like your advice on maybe what you'd give someone in the sense of training wise, when you'd recommend, oh yeah, go and try a competition out.
You know, I would say give yourself at least a few months of training before you go out there and compete. Now, everyone's different too, right? You may have somebody who comes in who has a wrestling background or a judo background, and they can easily go in and compete with a few weeks of training. But if it's someone who's never really trained before or have any martial arts experience, I would always tell them, give yourself 2 to 3 months, see how you feel after 2 to 3 months, and then we can go out and compete. Because I want somebody to have a good experience, right? Because competing it's scary. You know, it gets your adrenaline rushing, it gets your blood pumping. So, you know, it could be a scary thing for some people. But if you learn and take the time to learn positions and learn how to escape and things like that, it will give you confidence when you go out there and compete. Knowledge is confidence. So I would say few months, give yourself 2 to 3 months, and then go out there and compete.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Cassidy Welch about sort of competing as well, and she was saying that it's so much different. You'll roll around in the gym on the mats, and your arms don't get as fatigued or anything like that.
Yeah.
Even though you're going for it, and then when you go and compete, you're pumped for an adrenaline. Your arms blow out quick.
Exactly.
You're feeling pretty cream crackered fast, and it's a different level of training. You know, different. You can't really prepare for it until you go do it.
It's true.
And then she was saying about sort of competition levels now, because obviously they do jiu-jitsu for kids.
Yep.
When these kids are now turning to an age where they can compete with the adults, they've got 5, 6, 7 years worth of jiu-jitsu experience.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
When they're rolling on the mat and they're like, oh, they're a white belt. They're not really a white belt because they've had all this experience since juniors, and you're thinking, shit, how did this happen?
It's true, man. It's very true.
So who's been your sort of toughest competitor, like a couple of them, where you've gone and thought, this is tough, and come out on one?
A few of my toughest competitors, I will have to say, is definitely Lucas Lepre, Michael Lange, guys like Wagner Hosha. You know, those guys are always guys who are, you know, game to fight and bring the fight hard. So those are guys who I've competed against them multiple times over the years, and they've forced me to step up my game. You know, another guy too is like Celcinho Vinicius, who's another tough competitor. He brings the heat to you when he goes out there and competes. So guys like that who are, you know, fierce competitors have always been the competitors I like to compete against, first of all, because I think that's what people want to watch, and that's what I like to do. I like to go out there and compete against someone who wants to compete. And what I mean by that, I don't want someone to go out there and put me in a position where they're going to stall me out or hold me down for 8 minutes and they try to sweep me at the end. You know, so I enjoy a good fight. But those are the competitors who, over the years, who've brought, you know, excellent matches, and they've forced me to get better. They've helped me improve.
So what's your next sort of goal in BJJ for you? Just to win the world champs again, or you know what?
Yeah, definitely, man. For me, what's next for me, I definitely want to come back and defend my ADCC title. I would love to win three back-to-back titles, which hasn't been done, I think, since Marcelo Garcia did it. So I would love to do that, and I would love to come back and take another crack at the GI Worlds. I was training and preparing for that for this year. You know, obviously all the tournaments got canceled all throughout the world, so we're going to be looking to do that next year, 2021. And you know, odd years have been good years for me. So 2017, 2019, I won ADCC. So I'm looking good. I'm looking forward to that 2021.
What's your personal favorite? Gi, no gi? Doesn't matter to you?
It doesn't matter, to be honest with you. I enjoy both. You know, when I first started training, I just did both. That's just what it was. I never really questioned it, where, you know, I saw on the schedule, today's gi, tomorrow's no gi, and I just showed up for you know, the classes. So, you know, nowadays I think you see a huge split in the community where there's only gi fighters, there's only no gi guys, and there's, you know, then there's I think a select few now that only do both. So for me, I enjoy both. I started training both from my first week of training. My first week of training, I did gi and no gi that week. So it's just been something I've been used to since the beginning, and something I enjoy. So I do them both.
What one do you think's easier to transition from and into, like gi into no gi, or no gi into gi?
I think it's easier to transition from gi to no gi. You know, you know, no gi. If you just do no gi and try to do gi, I mean, the thing is that you can go. There can be conversations. There can be points made that, you know, either or can go either way, right? But if you had to ask me, I would definitely say going from no gi to gi would probably be more difficult, just because you're not used to gripping, right? You're not used to getting gripped yourself. Where, you know, in the gi, you're used to someone holding you down. Where sometimes no gi, I find it a little bit easier for me coming from the gi game, because now no one can hold me down. It's easier for me to move. You know, I have a lot more movement. So if I had to say, I would say that, you know, it's harder to go from no gi to gi.
What was the process for you transitioning to becoming sort of an earning a living off of jiu-jitsu? Because obviously that's a lot of people's dreams, you know, that they want to make a full-time killing from doing what they love.
Man, years of sacrifice and hard work and just, you know, ups and downs, man. So I mean, nowadays, you know, people have better opportunities to make a living off jiu-jitsu. I mean, now is way different from when I started. When I started, it was, what, 2004, 2005. There wasn't any sponsors. There wasn't social media that it's on this level, you know. Things were way different back then. So for me, I didn't really start making a living until a couple years into my black belt career, to be honest with you, you know. So from white belt all the way up until brown belt, first year black belt, I was working, man. I held jobs at McDonald's. I worked a job at McDonald's at once. I worked selling ice cream. I taught kids karate classes. I taught jiu-jitsu classes for kids, you know, teaching private lessons wherever I could here and there, and just scraping money together just to pay my bills and, you know, cover my, you know, my training, to be honest with you. And it was, like I said, it wasn't until a couple of years into my black belt, I'd say 2-3 years, where I started really making a living. And I wouldn't say a comfortable living either. It was just, you know, enough to, you know, buy some food and pay the portion of the rent I needed to pay for the apartment that we were all staying in. But it took years, man. It took years. Like I said, it took me, I said 2-3 years into my black belt to really start, you know, gaining some sponsors. You know, shout out to Tatami Fightwear. You know, they're the ones who I've been, you know, working with them since early on in my black belt career. And they're the ones who really started showing me the real support that athletes needed then. And, you know, and then from there it grew, and I was able to teach more seminars around the world as I continue to compete and build a name for myself. And that's when I really started making a decent living, when I was able to start traveling and start teaching, and that's all due to me building my name just off competing and training hard and working my best to go out there and prove that I am one of the best in the world.
How close are you and Gordon Ryan? How close are you both anyways? Like tight?
Not too close, to be honest with you. If I see him, I'll say hello. But we're not too close. You know, don't really know him too well, to be honest with you.
No. I was just going to ask you what your take is on his personality, because I follow him a lot on Instagram, and he does crack me up.
Yeah. He's definitely a character, man. He definitely keeps a lot of people entertained. But to be honest with you, like I said, I don't really know him too well to speak too much on that. But like I said, every time I see him, you know, he's said hello to me, and I said hello to him, and you know, we've trained a few times in the past, and that's pretty much about it.
How long did it take you to get your black belt?
About 4 years. So I started training jiu-jitsu full blown 100% when I was 15 years old, and I got my black belt at 19. I remember I got my black belt like a couple weeks before I turned 20. So 4 years and like 8 months, I want to say.
Man, that's long. That feels like it's long, but it's not. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you obviously got it in quite a quick period of time.
Yeah.
Based on sort of my general knowledge on how quick people achieve black belts, but to invest for that long. And was you training 5 days, 6 days a week, twice a week, 7 days?
So I was training twice a week sometimes during those times. You know, I was working. You know, I was working, and for the majority of that time, I was also in school. I was in high school. You know, I was, you know, all throughout, you know, white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt. I was still in high school. I got my brown belt when I was 17 years old, and you know, I was in high school, so I was working also at McDonald's during that time on the weekend. So I was only getting to training two to 3 times a week at the time. But even though I can only get to the academy so often, I was studying so much, man. I was studying a lot. So even though I could only physically train, you know, only a few times, I was mentally training, you know, mentally training 24/7, basically. I remember being in the classroom, and, you know, in New York, we have some brutal winters. And I remember having my jacket over my chair. And I remember just reaching back working Kimuras on the sleeve of my jacket, and the teacher being like, "Hey, Mr. Torres, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I caught myself like, oh, I was drilling Kimuras." You know what I'm saying? I was like, "Oh, I don't know." So I was constantly working, constantly training, and constantly getting those reps in.
Good question down here. It says, are you going to open up other affiliate schools?
Absolutely. So that's my goal, man. As of right now, we have one official affiliate, that's Sucker Free Jiu Jitsu. Weiss and Tyrone run that academy out in Long Island, New York. And Weiss is a black belt under me, and Tyrone's a brown belt under me. And my goal is to have more affiliates, but affiliates who are students of mine who I've had time to work with and develop. I don't want, what I want to avoid is someone randomly being, "Hey, can I be an affiliate?" I'm like, well, I want to get to know that person. I want to get to work with that person before we can, open up an affiliate or anything of that sort. So that's my goal. That's the reason why I don't have a bunch of affiliates right now. I want time to develop that relationship with those students who will eventually open up an affiliate and academy.
Yeah, I think that's quite an important part, because at the end of the day, it's your brand as well.
Right, exactly.
And if you get some bad seeds, should we say, that are representing your brand, it's only going to reflect badly on you. And obviously you don't want that.
Exactly.
No one wants that,
Nobody wants that. So I just want to make sure that, like I said, I build that strong relationship with those students before they go on and, open up their academies.
And do you ever think you'll make the transition into MMA at all? That's another question from the group.
I've always thought about it. I've had a lot of people tell me, "Man, you have a really good style for MMA, really good style. You have good takedowns, you get on top, you have good pressure, you have a perfect style for MMA." But it's never been something I wanted to do as a full-time career. I've always wanted to do at least a fight. MMA did always have some sort of interest for me, or I always had an interest for MMA, but I never had an interest to make it a career. I never wanted to say, "I want to be the UFC champion," or "I want to be this or that." But maybe one day I'll do a fight or two, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe in another year or two, I'll jump in there and give it a shot. I have trained MMA before. I have been part of, training camps, and, I've had different MMA fighters bring me in for some training camps before, and I've helped them with their grappling games. And so I've had a little bit of experience there. So I know what it takes to prepare for a fight. 'Cause I've seen, some of the best in the world prepare for a fight, but we'll see. We'll see.
Maybe you should make it a charity event.
Yeah, it could be
that
cool.
way it's all fun, right? But you still want to win, but
yeah,
it's probably a good thing. Stream it on YouTube, get tons of viewers, no doubt.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, actually. We'll see.
There you go. See, I'm flying the ideas out right now.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you're like a master of jiu-jitsu, in the sense of, like, every angle and every game, you've seen everything there is to see, or are you still in that mindset of student, constantly learning, always learning?
I'm constantly in that mindset of constantly learning and reaching new goals and new levels in my jiu-jitsu. I would never feel like I've mastered it. And I think you should avoid feeling like you mastered it, because usually when you think you've mastered something, you're done learning, right? You've closed the chapters and you have your tunnel vision on at that point, where I always want to continue learning. I want to keep an open mind. So I'm definitely not a master yet. There's a few positions where I feel like I've mastered a few positions, right? Because I believe in the 10,000 hours and 10,000 reps kind of rule, where I definitely have techniques where I've put 10,000 reps in them, and I feel like I understand them, better than most. But overall jiu-jitsu, no way, man. Jiu-jitsu is so infinite. I feel that there's always more to learn.
No, I agree. Like, you think you've seen it all, and then someone else crops along with something, and you're like, "Oh shit!" Like, that's pretty tasty.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
So what does it take to become an ADCC champ? Sorry, like, in the sense of dedication and focus and mindset. How do you go about it?
Man, it takes a lot of hard work and sacrifice, man, and a strong mindset, because, I'll say this, I'm not just saying this because I've won ADCC. In my opinion, ADCC is the toughest tournament in the world to win, and out of all the gi tournaments, out of all the no gi tournaments, ADCC is the toughest tournament to win. And for the simple fact that the tournament, one, it's hard to score in that tournament. So it's not easy to rack up points and to kind of just sit back and let the time run out. Like, it's hard to score. There's no advantages, and there's overtimes, right? Where, the referee doesn't have the decision like, hey, maybe I like this guy better, or maybe I know this guy, we were friends for 10 years ago, so I'll give him the nod on this one. Where in my opinion, ADCC leaves it up more to the fighters to see who wants it more, who wants to win. And with that being said, the training for that is insane, man. Most of my matches on this last ADCC, I think they were like 20-30 minutes, man, because it's so hard to score, so it's so easy to go into overtime. And the thing is, there can be multiple overtimes. So your cardio has to be on point. Your technique has to be on point, because after 10 minutes of grappling, you're going to be all sweaty. So you have to learn how to control somebody when they're full and drenched of sweat, man, that's a whole nother skill on its own. How do you control somebody when they're sweaty, and especially if they're not wearing a rash guard? It's hard. It's difficult to do. So training for that is super tough, man, in that sense. Your cardio has to be sharp. Your technique has to be sharper than ever. Your positions have to be tight, and your mindset has to be strong, man. You have to be ready to go out there and fight someone for 30-40 minutes. You have to, and keep that pace up, right? Because the referees are real strict on you in that tournament, where if you start kind of backing out, they'll hit you with some not negatives, but warnings, right? So you have to fight. You got to push that pace. So training is difficult, man. And you got to train hard. You got to train smart. You got to make sure, like I said, your cardio's on point, your technique's on point, your positions are tight, your takedowns are good, because there's parts of the matches where you can't pull guard, right? So you have to make sure you can work takedowns. So it's difficult, man. You have to be ready to work the hardest you've ever worked in your life, and bring that championship mindset to it too, because you have to prepare to fight somebody for 20-30 minutes. And that's something that's difficult to do, man. You get someone to do a 6-minute roll, most people want to take the next round off, right? Imagine doing a 20-30 minute match against a world-class grappler, and then your next round you have another world-class grappler, so it's tough, man. It's super tough. In that tournament, there's only 2 ways you can make it into that tournament. Either you get invited, and when you get invited, it's because either your grappling career, where you've done your grappling career, or you're a skilled MMA fighter with a strong grappling game, or you've won the trials, right? So you're gonna fight the best of the best, and I like it because that's what makes it sweeter at the end when you win a title like that, right? But training for that, man, it's definitely the hardest tournament there is to train for, man. It's tough, but if you're willing to put the work in, you give yourself the best opportunity to go out there and win. And I'm super grateful for those 2 titles I have to my name, man. And I forever cemented myself in the history books, I believe, as one of the best grapplers to do it, especially at that weight class.
What sort of things are you doing off the mats? Like, do you do any gym work, flexibility work, mobility work? Yep.
Absolutely, man. So I have a really good strength conditioning coach who doubles as my wrestling coach as well, Coach John Marsh. And he gets me ready, man. He gets me ready as far as strength conditioning. So we're doing a lot of running, lifting, circuits, swimming. We do tons of different workouts throughout the camp. One thing he's always big on is stretching. He always keeps me flexible and my body strong. We do a lot of, injury prevention workouts too, where, people tend to overlook those things where I'm going to go and lift heavy. Well, you also do workouts where, you keep the muscles around your joints strong and things like that. So he keeps me in check in that department. And wrestling too, there's times where we just take an hour and just go over wrestling techniques to implement to the jiu-jitsu game. So that's what I do outside of jiu-jitsu training.
Yeah, I mean, I think injury prevention's kind of a massively overlooked key point, because when I first started, I was like, this isn't too bad. And then the next day I'm like, man, my elbows, my shoulders, my knees, my ankles, like, I'm getting old. Like, what is going on here? And then it's only when people said, you need to look into your mobility and stop lifting so heavy in the gym and focus on recovery and, keeping yourself loose. And I was like, okay, I'm going to need a massage here and and the chiropractor to like start cracking me out and that, because I feel like I'm crippled, but it's such a nice feeling. It's weird. Like, to be injured isn't nice, but
I know what you mean.
Satisfying because you've trained hard and you're
I'm missing that feeling right now.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Except getting wrapped up. I hate it. I'm just like, got legs round my head. I'm being pulled down. I feel the the air being pushed out of me, and I'm like, oh, I'm gone.
Yeah,
How a tip as well, like I was wondering, is how do you make yourself like heavy? You know, when you're on top of someone.
yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to someone who wants to make themselves a lot heavier?
So when it comes to feeling heavier on top, it's about knowing where to drop your weight. And there's two things one thing you want to focus on is third point pressure, right? So imagine a tripod, right? One of the legs on the tripod, most of the weight's going to be focused on that one leg. So that one leg for your body could be your shoulder, could be your hip, could be the way you're hugging the person's hip with your arm, you know, things like that is how you make yourself feel heavier. Think of yourself as a tripod in certain positions, and where can you focus your weight to pin somebody down? And for me, I usually use my shoulder pressure for most of the time to pin somebody down. And I focus all my weight through that shoulder pressure by getting up on my two legs, butt in the air, where I'm like a tripod, and I'm focusing all my weight on one certain point. Another thing I would recommend, a good concept to carry with you when you're trying to stay heavy, is always force the person's body to look two different ways. So what do I mean by that? Have their lower half looking one way as you force the upper half to look the other way, right? So twist them out like a towel. And when you start doing things like that and understanding concepts like that, that's how you pin somebody down, and that's how you make them feel like you weigh 1,000 pounds on top. You're like, man, how much do you weigh? I get that question all the time. How much do you weigh? I'm like, man, I'm a lightweight, man. I fight 77 kilos. And they're, sometimes in disbelief. They're like, man, you feel like you weigh, I don't know, 100 kilos, you know? And, those two things, it's so much deeper than that. We can sit here and just talk about shoulder pressure all day. But if you focus on yourself, envision yourself as a tripod and focus on twisting the person out like a towel when you're on top, that's how you're going to start finding those positions where you feel heavier on top.
Yeah, I mean, this guy I roll around with, he weighs 73. His name's Sam, and when he's on top of me, he like pushes his stomach into my stomach, and I feel all my air just like come out, and I'm like, bro, why are you so heavy? Like, what is going on?
Right.
I'm like, I weigh more than you, yeah.
Right.
You're like just wrapping me up like a snake,
Yeah, yeah.
It's horrible. It's such a good feeling, but it's just horrible at the same time.
Yeah.
Such a weird vibe. But what would you give advice to? What advice would you give to someone who's sitting on the fence and doesn't know whether they want to try out Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and they're kind of umming and ahhing about it?
What I would say is go out there with, what I try to do is always tell someone who comes into the academy, like, hey, I'm not sure about this. I've heard about it. I always recommend, why don't you come in and watch a class? Just watch a class. Watch a class. And when you watch a class, watch it with an open mind. Try to listen to the instructor and just watch your first class. And when I tell people that, they sit down, they watch it, they get a little bit more comfortable being at the academy, because it can be an intimidating thing, right? Someone coming in and you're like, hey, put this gi on. Let's go, 20 push-ups, go. It can be intimidating. So I always recommend, come in, watch your first class, check it out, ask questions. And I, myself as an instructor, I try to make that person feel comfortable. If I see someone sitting on the side watching, I'll go over and try to explain to them what's going on, what's the goal of the position today. So that's what I recommend. Watch your first class with an open mind, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
I mean, I'd watched Jiu Jitsu online a little bit before I went and joined in a group. A friend invited me down for a free taster session.
Yeah.
And when I watched it on the internet, I was like, man, I could do this. I'm going to go down there and fold people up, no problem. I'm strong. It's not going to be an issue. I hop on that mat. We do some technique work and some drills and things like that. And then obviously we have the free rolling at the end.
Yeah.
And man, my ego got kicked out that door so fast. It's unbelievable. Humbled straight away within the first 3 minutes. I'm sweating. Right. I'm like, what is going on? So for anyone who wants to take that approach, I'd recommend highly that you don't, because you don't get anywhere that way. You really do need to listen in and learn. But if you I don't know if it was the same for you, but for me, after that first session, I was like, here's my money, I'll be doing this for the rest of my life now.
Oh yeah.
Such a great thing, such a great buzz. And it's hard sometimes explain what that buzz is to someone who's watching until they take part in it. And then I think everyone has the same thing. They're like, I'm in it for the long game.
Oh yeah, I fell in love with jiu-jitsu right off the bat, man. I loved it. You know, just to feel how effective of a martial art it was. I was like, man, this is crazy. I remember my first day I got triangled by somebody, someone smaller. I was like, man, this is crazy. I love it though. I gotta learn this. Teach me more.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing as well. Like size, it kind of puts into perspective that size doesn't necessarily matter. Like in the sense of you weigh your weight. If some massive geezer come up to you in the street who has no training at all,
right? Exactly.
Man, you're chopping him down like a tree. You're tying him up. It's no problem, you know.
Exactly.
So what other things do you do sort of outside of jiu-jitsu in the sense of other hobbies, other interests, family time, things like that?
Family time is big for me, man. I'm really big in family time. You know, I try to spend as much time as possible. You know, for me, I spent about 10 years away from my family, you know, just traveling the world, competing. You know, I went into a place in my mind where my whole focus was just jiu-jitsu at one point when I was trying to build my name. I was trying to make, you know, prove myself out there. So after those 10 years is when I decided to move back to New York to open my academy. And one of the reasons why I decided to come back and open my academy was also to be near my family again. You know, I felt, you know, the time was right to spend time again with my family. And I remember during that time, my sister just had a baby. I'm like, you know, I want to be part of the new generation of our family that's growing now. So I try to spend as much time as possible with my family, you know, when I'm off the mats. That's something I enjoy doing and something that keeps me balanced, I feel, you know, where, you know, the daily grind of jiu-jitsu can be difficult and can be difficult to mentally, you know, withstand sometimes. But I always felt that having that, you know, that family time always brings me back and balances me out and kind of calms me down, cools me back down to get me ready for another week of training hard and grinding towards the goals. But yeah, family time, and that's what I try to do. Try to spend time with my family outside the mats.
Do any other members of your family partake in jiu-jitsu at all?
No, they don't, man. They don't. I have a younger brother. He's 10 years younger than I am. He's 20 years old, and he was a really good wrestler in high school, and he's physically stronger than I am, man. He's really good, man. He's talented. He could have been really good, and his wrestling was solid, man. Solid. I remember he could take me down, you know, and I tried to get him to jiu-jitsu, and it just wasn't something that he liked. He ended up joining the military shortly after high school, but you know that's cool too. You know, he went on his path and he's doing his thing. But and other than him doing a little bit of wrestling for a couple of years, no one else trains in my family.
It's mad because obviously you'd think that with your success that your family members would be like, man, I want to get in there with him and show him up, like, you know,
right, exactly.
try and be successful too. If I school my own brother, I'm gonna look like I'm gonna get the 87,000 followers on Instagram.
Right. I wish, man. I wish that was the case, but you know, that's the way the world goes around. Everyone does their own thing and does what makes them happy.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, it's never too late either. Like,
no,
he may come round to hopping in when he's 30, 40, who knows, right?
I hope so. He's almost done with his military contract, so hopefully when he comes back home to New York, I can convince him to get on the mats.
Well, JT, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I really, really do appreciate your time, man.
Likewise.
It's been quality, honestly, and motivational as well, and you've made me think about jiu-jitsu a lot more now, which is good because it kind of been slipping out of my mind and now it's just been pulled right back in.
Beautiful. I'm glad to hear that, man. It's an honor to hear that.
Is there anything you want to add on at the end at all, like where people can find you, follow you, check out your academy and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can definitely follow me here on Instagram at JTorresBJJ, where I'm, you know, constantly posting, you know, little techniques and, you know, cool snippets of my inside of my mind when it comes to training and things like that. You guys can also follow my academy at Essential BJJ on Instagram. I also have Essential BJJ online, where if you use the coupon code Jiu-Jitsu Strong, you guys will get 2 weeks for free on there, so you guys can check out technique videos, sparring videos, a whole bunch of cool stuff on that website you guys can check out, especially during this time where we're all, you know, away from the mats. And just want to thank, you know, all my students, all my family, you know, to Tommy. Just want to thank everybody who has nothing but love and support for me, and I appreciate everybody.
Yeah, brilliant. If you send me over those links in the in our chat. I'll put them in the video description as well.
Oh, perfect.
So people can go down there and click it, and the code you used and everything. I'll put all the details down there for them to check out.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Brilliant, man. You take care and look after yourself, all right? And stay safe.
Likewise, brother. Take care. Thank you.